All right, then I am going to click record here and officially welcome you to Balls in Your Face Marketing. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Chantel Soumis, as I would say it, as being the born in Quebec and being a little bilingual. I know the Americans go with Soumis, so I'm glad that we at least covered the fact that it when you go work both ways. And that, of course, you are, this is not surprising, you are an exceptionally agreeable, friendly person. You'll let people pretty much probably call you just about anything unless it's like derogatory or mean. And even then you'll probably just like brush it off.
It's fine.
It's all good. So let me do a quick introduction. So you are, what a bit of an overachiever really you are, because you are both the creative director and brand ambassador for Stardust Creative, and you're the marketing director for Valleycom. And you're a co-host on the Unlearn Show. And in addition to all of this, I've learned that you have a number of physical ailments and challenges. I think you have multiple sclerosis. Is that right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Oh
yes.
Oh my gosh. So how do you do that? How do you yeah.
You do it because when you hit rock bottom and you have everything stripped away from you, you realize you get this new sense of gratitude, right? And this new appreciation for life. And for me, it's an obsession of color. It's an obsession of marketing, of copy, of being able to see again, because I lost my vision at one point. And that made me so obsessed with design, marketing, and communications. And having that I don't know, self-actualization happen out of the blue makes you take advantage of every single opportunity that comes your way, unlike before. At least for me. Maybe it's not for everyone else, but that's how I do it.
Makes sense. I mean, right? It's like the you don't know what you got until it's gone kind of thing, right? You appreciate things a little more when you realize what life is like without them. So that's interesting. I didn't even realize that you had lost your vision at one point. Wow. And here you are, like doing all of these things. And on top of that, you define yourself as bubbly and blessed. So, which clearly, look at the smile. Look at it. Look how cheerful she is. So now here's something that I've always said though, and I was having a conversation with Kurt Mercadante the other day.
Yes.
And Kurt. And I was, and I was saying to him though that there is, I do have this slight reaction. When I meet people and every single time I see them, they're like, "I'm great." It's like, come on, you can't be great all the time. Is that a bit of a so to maybe challenge you a little? Is that putting on a bit of a front, or is this just who you are?
No, I have hard days. I'm only human, but I use humor and quirkiness and just being weird to get through it. So I'm still bubbly. I'm still going to be that bubbly person. I noticed that when I continuously push out positive energy into the world around me, just smiling at people or saying hi, even if I'm in a crappy mood, that lifts me up. So I have the power to make the hard times a lot better. And knowing that makes things so much easier. So I try to be that bubbly person, and sometimes I feel like a fraud. I think everyone does at some point in their life have that imposter syndrome. But yeah, so I'm all about flaws, all about getting through the struggle.
Yeah, and I don't want to mischaracterize you, because in truth as well, I have seen you post videos on LinkedIn where you've sort of exposed your vulnerability. You've allowed yourself to be vulnerable, which again I find inspiring and very impressive. This is something that Kurt and I were talking about the fact that there is something that people are allowing themselves to be vulnerable on LinkedIn in this very kind of constructive way. So again, I see you doing that. I think it's noble and impressive. I imagine that it's inspiring for other people who have to suffer through the same kinds of challenges that you do.
Yeah. It's tricky because when I talk to people who have struggles whether it's mental or physical, you know, depression is something that's super important to talk about because it's so hidden, and you don't, you know, people can struggle so silently and feel so alone, and that's when things escalate, right? There's a massive difference between vulnerability and oversharing. If you overshare, you're giving off that woe is me vibe, that pity me, I have it hard. But when you are vulnerable, you give those tips for improvement. Those you share your challenges, and you also share, excuse me, how to overcome them, how you overcome them, how you're constantly working on that, right? Yeah. So I think that when people talk about the differently abled community or different challenges that they have to work through, always being vulnerable instead of oversharing is going to be key, right? To make sure that you're providing value in your vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm. So, right? Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely. And for sure, I mean, I definitely find that exactly. I think what you're talking about too is this sort of victim mentality or this victimhood that I see pervasive. And that is a turnoff to me for sure. Whereas exactly, there's a massive difference between that versus what I think you're doing, which is a much more positive and much more constructive way to deal with that. Why don't you tell me a bit about though, like what is some advice or tips that you think companies should deploy to accommodate people with different disabilities and challenges to tap in still to the great talent that people such as yourself have to offer?
Yeah, there's so many amazing studies, like the Dandelion Principle, which is about, you know, when you think about a dandelion, you think, it's a nuisance. It's a weed. It grows on a beautiful, lush green grass. But then you think about this dandelion and the effects that this has. The dandelion is used, it has so many different miraculous elements in it that help with cancer cures and reversing different physiological effects that help your body grow and blossom. And also, like even Dandy tea, it's a supplement for people who can't, you know, do the caffeine, but it has so many amazing other elements in it. So when you think about that and you think about the differently abled community, you're thinking about pulling these people who in certain elements, you know, certain environments won't thrive. But if you give them the right environment and you coach them the right way, they are going to provide everything that you need and more that you don't even know exists yet. Because a lot of times people in that community who have to overcome struggles constantly, they know what to expect. They have that strength to get through things, unlike other people.
But
I'm unstable. There we go. Am I back?
No, you're back. You're back. It's been
back.
That actually ran quite smoothly on our end. So I heard everything you said there.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. Good. And by the way, this is
good.
On top of all of these things that you do. We
perfect. I'm in the middle.
Hear the kiddos in the background, which is fine. But then again, on top of all of that, she's a mom. So again, just, you know, I'm hugely impressed by everything that you're doing. I think it's outstanding. And I also do. I think your point when you talk about the hidden illnesses, mental illness. That is a serious issue. I think there is a suicide epidemic going on, especially in the United States these days. And I think a lot more light needs to be shone on this issue. You know, I certainly regard mental illness like I would a physical illness. It needs to be treated like that. I think we need to work harder to remove the stigma that goes with those illnesses. Hopefully this helps in some way, again, put some light on those issues. Did you capture all that?
Damn you, internet!
Yeah, about authenticity, right? We want to present ourselves authentically. It's not about being all buttoned up and delivering, you know, your professional executive self. It's about being you. It's about delivering your differences, your differentiators to the table. And being vulnerable and opening up and being authentic should really start pushing and accepting people to voice their struggles inside so that you can relate, you can share your stories, and you can, by sharing, you learn and you grow, right? By sharing, you have that community that's got your back if you have an internal struggle. So it feels a lot less taboo to voice your opinion, to have a down day, so that we can, as a culture, the world, support each other and move forward to solve this epidemic.
Yeah, no, it takes courage, I think, and I think hopefully, more people seeing this and seeing you inspires them to have that courage as well, and I hope it helps in some small little way. I'm glad that you brought up millennials, because I did want to talk to you about that. I know that you have some insights, so tell me, for the older guard like myself, who see these sort of two sides of the coin, right? I see these ambitious, hardworking millennials such as yourself, and then I hear these stories about some guy in the United States who's suing his parents. He's 30 years old. They're kicking him out. He's a deadbeat dad. I mean, what's going on? We're dealing with the delay there.
That's a good question. I think that's a massive personality difference that you're going to find in any generation, to be honest. I don't think it's a millennial specific thing, but at the same time, I do know that with the edge of digital right now, and how, the millennials were born and raised in this digital atmosphere, right? So we're used to taking things into our control. We don't have to go to the library and go through the Dewey Decimal System, right? We have everything at our fingertips. So maybe that's what's pushing the weirdness. But there's a lot going on, and I think that the authenticity and being yourself and advocating for that, and really pushing forward for customer human-centered design is what's being pushed by the generation itself and marketing efforts.
Yeah. So, well, I think that there's a combination of factors, part of which I think is more of maybe a parenting style where that was maybe a little over sheltering, over coddling, this notion that, hey, every kid should get a ribbon and a prize, even though whether they came in first or last, doesn't really prepare children for the real world. So I think part of it is related to that. The other sort of theory the other theory that I have about all of this is, when people talk about millennial generation or generation XYZ, I've got a big pushback on that. I come more from the school of David Foote's demographic approach of boom bust echo, right? So you had the baby boomers, all right after the Second World War, huge cohort. Everybody came home from the war, had a whole ton of babies. Then there is the sort of baby busters, which is where I fall in. So these are all the sort of just before the end of the World War. There's a small little cohort of my generation. And then you've got the echo boom, right? All those tons of babies after the Second World War that were born, they went and had their babies. So that's who I'm kind of calling the millennials. And if I look back historically at that baby boomer generation, the divide that I see is it's almost like history repeating itself. So it's like, look at what they write in their youth. There's a whole bunch of hippies. Lots of them were hippies, but at the same time, you've got all of these. You've got your Bill Gates and those types of people. So that's my theory on it. That it's really just sort of history repeating itself.
Oh, 100%. You see this big eruption and sustainability, and you see all of these people who are trying to make the world a better place, but then you also see the opposite end of the spectrum, right? That's all about, making sure that we're powerful, and it's all about power and hungry for making, yourself a better person instead of the world. So I feel like no matter what time period it is, there's always going to be the people who are self-centered and the others that focus on the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
No, it makes total sense. Although this was something that I'd said in an episode when I was interviewing Casey Jones, and I advanced this definition of culture as the socially accepted neurosis of the time. And being so more specifically with the neurosis that I would say is narcissism. I think that is a bit of a problem. I hopefully we're kind of moving away from that. But I think that's a factor of it too.
Yes.
So,
Yes, especially in this age of social media, right? Where you're trying to highlight the perfect photo, the perfect Instagram, you know, it's nauseating for me, but there's a you know, a lot of other people out there that just worship that stuff. So
well, yeah, it is. I agree with you.
narcissism.
I find it nauseating too. And on top of that, I think it's contributing to that that sort of increased level of depression there, right? Because I think it's in human nature to compare ourselves. We cannot help but do that. So when all you see are this fake image, this fake wonderful life, happy image of everybody else, and then in comparison that doesn't match what you feel internally, I think that's fueled this depression in a way. So again,
I just read this research report on how Gen Z, you know, the generation following the millennials, is actually the loneliest generation yet because of exactly what you're saying, you know, about, you know, there's 12-year-old girls wearing wigs for every single day because they feel like they don't love their own hair, you know, and these makeup tutorials where they're literally painting their faces to contour, you know.
Oh,
sad.
don't you know, I was at my kids had a fun fair at their school yesterday, and sure enough there were these like young girls with makeup on their faces, and I found it shocking. And by the way, like that was something that because you know, in my earlier years I used to work at day camps for a long time, and then there was a break that I took from working with kids, and then later on when I moved back to Montreal for a little period, I was a tour guide. And so all of a sudden I was, you know, going on these trips with these sort of 13-year-olds. And I definitely saw a difference in the way that the boys were the boys. They kind of stayed the same. They were into the same kind of things. They behaved the same. But there was this sort of, to me, what was this bizarre sexualization. You know, these 13-year-old girls going, "Hi, Julian, hi." And I was like, whoa, like what is going on with these girls? Like something's not right here.
Sorry. That was good. Go on, keep going.
Well,
let's watch this play out.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the solution is. But you know, I guess one is, you know, let your kids be kids. You know,
it's hard because you're a parent, right?
Yeah. Man, but I have boys, and I'm quite grateful for that at this point.
I have a boy too, thank goodness. Yes, I can't imagine raising a girl, you know, in this day and age. But it's a lot of pressure too, because you see these kids grow up who are very entitled and very spoiled, and you know, they think that the world is owed to them and that they should just get what everyone else gets because it's fair, right?
Yeah.
But that's like you said, a lot of parenting. It's got so much to do with parenting to make sure that those kids are, you know.
Yeah, but not, you know, what you just said there, I think, is what you just said there is kind of actually key. I think, right, this idea that they should get everything because that's fair. That is where, personally, where and it's actually, you know, if there was this debate the other day, the month debate with Stephen Fry and Jordan Peterson against Michelle Bobak and Michael Dyson, talking about the subject of political correctness. And that was the point that Jordan Peterson was making of you know, that this is, you know, trying to say, well, at what point have the left gone too far in terms of ideas? And I think it's what he's saying in that is, when we start pushing for equality of outcome instead of equality of opportunity, they've gone too far. What do you think about that?
100%. I think that fairness is earned. You know, you have to work for every single piece that you get. So
yeah, exactly. Like exactly. Respect, this idea that everybody should be respectful of everybody. No, why? Right? That you should respect should be earned. So that's it. So what do you think is the difference? Like, why do you think that you have what I would say is a more mature, reasonable attitude about this. And then there's this group, this cohort within your generation that feels entitled.
I think it's 100% parenting. To be honest with you, I do. You know, I actually have 3 older brothers. 2 are much older than me, so they're Gen X, I think. Yeah. But I was raised with discipline. I was raised to when I got my driver's license, my dad made me learn how engines work, and he made me, you know, watch these videos on how to change your own tire, because he's not going to come out and do it. If you have your driver's license, you need to do it all on your own. So don't trust AAA. So the parenting thing is a big piece of that, but also I'm extremely introspective, and I love to just focus, especially with what I went through in my own noodle with multiple sclerosis and the brain damage. Is I just try to soak up as much knowledge as I can to grow and to understand other people, because I'm learning from people, the baby boomers. They're my biggest teachers right now. They're the ones that I'm absorbing everything from, you know, especially motivational speakers, and just incredible people who've come way before me who have so much wisdom to share. So I think that's a big piece. A lot of people in the millennial generation and Gen Z are just learning from themselves right now in their own community. That's super small. Thankfully, I'm not the youngest on the spectrum of millennials, so I have that as my advantage. But I also think that's also a piece of where you are in your life's journey too.
Interesting.
You know, college, out of college, right?
Yeah. So okay, so let's bring all of this back to the field of marketing and communications. How should businesses, you know, what should businesses be mindful of when they are hiring millennials, marketing to millennials? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's extremely important to keep open communications. There's a massive flaw in a lack of communications. So making sure that management and leadership are actively communicating with the entire company, no matter how big it is or how small it is, having those check-ins and those meetups to make sure that there's values in place and policies and procedures in line that also leave a massive opportunity for flexibility and creativity, right? Because millennials want to be creative. We want to go out and we want that recognition for our you know, what we're trying to do, right? Everybody wants recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what, like, that's the one thing I would say, I'll just jump in to say that, you know, I don't know for sure what the jobs of the future are. We know that, you know, AI is going to be replacing a lot of jobs at some point, and it's going to be a lot, I think it's going to be a lot of those sort of analytical or mechanical and so on. So what's left for us, I think, is the creative.
Yeah. And humanity, right? Those relationships. Yeah. Because people don't want to do business with robots. They want to do business with people. Yeah. So I don't think that'll ever be replaced too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Interesting stuff. So
yeah.
So by the way, before
so
we go,
change.
And it will keep on going. Like, yeah, it's the genie's out of the bottle, as I keep saying. So, so tell me what's on the horizon for you right now with all of these, with Stardust Creative, with Valleycom, with the Unlearn show. What are you trying to do with all of that stuff?
Well, I'm obsessed with marketing. Like I said, I eat, sleep, and breathe it. I dissect everything out of habit because I'm so obsessed with it. The messaging, you know, what can I do to make it more compelling? And then the design. Most people don't know this, but I can't see very well out of this eye. It's irreversible. So my attention to detail and appreciation is like amplified times a million, right? So for me and my future and hopes and dreams is to continue exploring the cutting edge of marketing in the field, to continuously understand the different generations and how to market to them, whether it's with compelling messaging or design aspects, right? For a while there, we had the big infographic boost, right? And then a lot of video. Now everything's video. So And then, virtual reality. We need to keep pushing this forward for each industry and each niche. So that's why I'm obsessed with it. That's my future with Stardust and personal branding too. In this world of the ever-evolving digital landscape, you need to set yourself out as a differentiator in the marketplace, right? With whatever you do, in whatever business you're representing. So making sure that all of that's streamlined so that people know who you are and how to look for you and what to expect when they meet you. Bubbly and blessed, right?
There you go. Yeah.
No surprise here.
Yeah, no, look, I think, look, you clearly have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. You're open-minded, you're practical, you're reasonable. I think you are going to absolutely, and the other thing too is you've already clearly identified what you're passionate about, which is a big part of that. And this is what I think Kurt talks about fulfillment, freedom and fulfillment is identifying what your core competencies are, what you're passionate about. I think you're way ahead of the game. I think you are gonna just absolutely kill it in your career. I can't wait to see what you do next and what comes from this. You're gonna crush it for sure. I hate using that word because that's Gary V's.
Well, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers to that. So thank you.
What's the future for you?
Geez. It's funny. We'll see. My agency is relatively young. JD Evans, and then this show has been hugely fulfilling. I get to meet people like yourself, exchange ideas, learn from people like that. So really, I think I'm just going to keep on doing more of this and keep on expanding the agency and our capacities to serve our clients. And we'll see where it all goes. But I'm having a good time too. So no complaints.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
It's what, as I keep saying, is there's this new economy of authenticity, and I'm cashing in. I'm just, I'm doing me, you're doing you. I think it's a very positive direction that we're heading in. And what I've always said too is I think marketers are frequently the canary in the coal mine, right? So that for example, I've often been able to predict a downturn in the economy based on whether agencies are hiring or firing. What I'm seeing now is some large agencies are firing, but that doesn't actually necessarily indicate the downturn in the economy. It's an indication of the change in the economy, and it's this specific change of authenticity. So I'm riding it. I'm cashing in. I think it's a great time for you to do you, for me to do me, and to find our tribes. And I think we're in the same tribe.
Heck yes. So, probably. Can I ask you one more question?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So when you say marketing is the canary in the coal mine, I totally agree with that. How do you feel about marketing's place in business development and sales? Because that's what drives the revenue. That's what drives the profit, right? And I've noticed all too often that companies cut marketing first, or they avoid marketing first. So what do you say about, what's your perspective on all of that?
Okay, so you're absolutely right that marketing is often the first thing that does get cut. So my answer is twofold. One is that the traditional way that businesses have operated has been very siloed, right? So exactly, there was the marketing department, there was the sales department, there was fulfillment department, administrative department, etc. So one is, people have to move away from that. Everything always was connected, but it's just become that much more fluid, right? Traditionally, you didn't have that immediate response to marketing that you do today, right? So you would run some magazine ads and you wouldn't really know for months what the response was, and nor would you even get any actual good hard data on what that was. The marketers had to kind of really throw out a bunch of bullshit in terms of, you've had this much reach, these many impressions, but it was really just throwing shit on a wall and you didn't have the clear data that is as immediate as it is today. So literally today, you can throw out an ad, start getting a response back, and respond to that, all within a week. So exactly, the larger companies have to get out of that siloed mentality, understand the interconnectivity of everything, and it is all departments. It's not just marketing and sales. It's product development. It runs right through. I think, does that answer your question?
Yes, they need to change their thought processes. They need to figure out that, especially with marketing automation, right? And like you said, those metrics that come through, everything's provable now, right? So yeah, I think that, how do you help shift that thought process? How do you help shift the idea of marketing coming last and pushing it to come, as one of the top 3 or whatever?
Well, that's a very tough question, because in a larger corporation, right, the people at the moment, let's say, who are up at the top there, they're not quite as plugged in. They have their traditional ways of doing things, and on top of that, they at this point in their careers, they say, well, we know that this works. We know that if we invest this much in TV advertising or print advertising and so forth, that at least we get this kind of a return. And the thing is that also, like, those people maybe are not really the ones getting the data. They, in many cases, have an assistant, right, who's doing all their scheduling and all of their connecting to everybody else. So I think that it is a challenge that they're removed. So I guess one thing is to not just target, just trying to get in at the top level. You need to get into the sort of the lower level people and trust that, if you can sell yourself to someone sort of lower down the ranks or starting out, that hopefully they'll tell the person above them, they'll tell the person above them, etc. And by the way, that referral, it becomes that much stronger, right? They're going to respond to somebody who, within their own business that they know and like and trust, says, hey, we should really be paying attention to this. The other thing too is for marketers, or tips that I say is, especially for people who are just starting out, let's say, for example, in Facebook advertising, right? And people will say, okay, let's go after the high income earners, those people in that top position. That obviously most people are going to do that. So, and that therefore drives up the price of that audience. So you need to start thinking a little more outside of the box about, okay, well, how can we kind of go around? What do those people, what are their additional interests? What blogs do they listen to? What jeans do they buy? What beer do they drink? And then start targeting that stuff, right? Because you're gonna start hitting them in a more sort of surreptitious way, in a little more less direct, versus the high income earner. Let's just go after them. So that's one strategy. And then really, I think it's just a matter of just keep on getting out there, put the message out that there is this new economy, that we are no longer in the industrial age, we're in the information age, and that means something.
Heck yes. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Sold.
you. Sweet. So thank you so much for spending some time. It's kind of fun that you kind of I'm glad that you kind of threw the questions back on me. But I guess this goes back to you being a host on Unlearn. You're like, hey, good for you for taking control.
Come on.
Very impressed. Very impressed. So thanks again so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
I